Welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. Get ready to explore the exciting world of financial advice as we embark on this special series exploring the very best in the industry. We'll be shining a spotlight on past winners of the prestigious Money Marketing Awards, sharing their stories and insight. Plus, we'll be gearing up for this year's highly anticipated award ceremony. Get inspired, gain valuable knowledge, and don't forget to secure your place at this year's unmissable event. Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager. And in this week's episode, I'm joined by Scott Daniels, co-founder at the Plus Group. Thank you for joining me today, Scott.
Thank you very much for having
me. So congratulations on being named Best Paraplanning Service at the 2023 Money Marketing Awards. I'm sure it must have felt great when you got that achievement. But could you share your initial reaction to winning this award?
Of course. It's probably shock. So we've entered a couple of awards over the years and kind of been runner-up and highly commended in the past. So it was a shocking nice thing to win. I didn't actually think I was going to make the ceremony. I was in Scotland the day before. So I managed it was easier actually to get a train direct to London than it was to Liverpool. So luckily I was able to make it in the end.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what do you believe sets you apart in your paraplanning services and makes it truly exceptional for financial advisors and their clients?
I think it's kind of a passion for what we do. So I think every good paraplanner at heart is a bit of a geek. So loves the puzzles, loves putting it all together. So kind of the achievement you feel when you can see the plan come together and can see how a client's going to meet their goals. Sense of achievement for that and the passion, I think, runs through all of the paraplanners that kind of work with us. And obviously from myself, that's a real sense of achievement as well. The other thing is probably we're always looking at how we can improve. We never rest on kind of where we are. We're always constantly looking at how we can do things different, how we can do things better. We have a in-house team that basically we meet monthly to see what did we do this month, where can we kind of make improvements. So incremental gains all the time, I think, is probably what helps us kind of stand out a little bit from the crowd.
Yeah. And I think I actually was the chair in your session, in the judging session. And I have to say, I think that came across to the judges, that passion that you had for that. So I think it clearly shows when you speak about it, that it is something that, and I understand that, yeah, being a bit of a nerd for what you love is really good. I think being a nerd for something just means that you're passionate about something.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So how does your team go above and beyond to ensure financial plans are technically sound and tailored to each client's unique needs and goals?
So first of all, I think for our team, all of our paraplanners are minimum diploma qualified. So anybody that knows me, I tend to get them a soapbox about that. So we could have a whole other podcast, I think, on just that side of it. But for me, kind of the paraplanners truly understand, and the advice the advisor is trying to give helps them to kind of identify gaps, potential problems, opportunities within that the advisor potentially might not have seen or kind of thought about. So being able to understand the advice that's being given is key to kind of delivering that service. So for me, I think minimum diploma qualified. A lot of our guys are kind of chartered, and we support our team to kind of get to that point as well. Secondly, I think we are not a yes company. So again, I say this a fair bit, is we don't just take orders. That's not kind of what we are as a business. And again, as paraplanners, we work collaboratively with the advisors. We're not order takers. And the kind of advisors we work with tend to like that. They work on a collaborative basis and just seem to see this client and this is what we're thinking of doing. He's the kind of objectives. What do you think? That's kind of the relationships we tend to have with the advisors. So that's kind of how we help with the clients. And I think the attention to detail is always key. I think paraplanning, it goes without saying that attention to detail needs to be there. And obviously being able to kind of pull out that accurate information and kind of find those little niches or things that potentially need that extra detail, because if the detail's wrong at the beginning, it just carries all the way through the planning process. So I think that's a really key point in that as well.
And I know that you said you'll get on your soapbox, but do you want to just touch a little bit more on why you believe that, paraplanners need at minimum a diploma?
Yeah, I think again, I don't want to kind of take up too much time on this, but for me, obviously, we talk about power planning as a profession, but the issue I have potentially with that is anybody can say they're a power planner.
Mm.
So I've kind of interviewed people where literally the day before they were making sandwiches in Subway, and that's a true story. And then the next day they've just put power planner on their CV and are asking for kind of silly salaries. There's no minimum qualifications that you need to be a power planner. There's no kind of anything that you need to say, right, you have to have this to be a power planner. You can literally call yourself one. Whereas with things like an advisor, you need to be at least kind of diploma qualified. If you're a doctor, if you're a solicitor, if you're an accountant, it's the same thing. And I'm quite passionate about pushing for power planning as a true profession. So for me, having minimum standards, i.e. having minimum kind of qualification criteria and things like that, makes a lot of sense. And it allows advisors to kind of judge kind of power planners more evenly as well, because okay, but he's got at least this, they've got at least an understanding of how different types of business work and different plans and products and things like that. So yeah, I'm very, very passionate about that. So hopefully you can tell.
Yeah. Well, when you lay it out like that, it makes complete sense to me. And it does feel a bit silly. Not that there's anything wrong with going from, working in Subway to wanting to be a paraplanner, but I don't think that you can just go from, working in Subway to being like, I found this thing on the internet called Paraplanner. I am one now.
Exactly. And I think that's the issue. I think that's the issue with it. It to an extent it diminishes what we as paraplanners are in my eyes. If anybody can just say they are it, and I said I'm passionate about what we do and what we support in terms of the advisors and clients as well. And I think what we do and what we deliver is really important, and to be recognized for that. And I think things like the Money Marketing Awards and things like that are really helpful in that process of elevating paraplanning where it should be within the financial advice process. And I'd like to see that continue in professionalization of paraplanning.
Yeah. Yeah. So what specific processes, technologies, or approaches does your team employ to streamline paraplanning and deliver efficient, high quality support to advisors?
So again, this is a passion project of mine in that we actually built our own paraplanning software.
Wow.
So we were using other kind of CRMs and other kind of tools to try and manage the power planning process, and we just couldn't get things to kind of work how we wanted it to. So we took the decision to basically build our own case engine, so case management solution called Fluid. So we spent the past probably, I think, 6 or 7 years now actually building that solution. Originally for us internally to manage our kind of cases and our workload. We then allowed advisors access to it so they could track it in real time, so they could see where the case was up to, access documents, see the suitability letters. And then off the back of that, a lot of advisors were asking, well, actually, this is really great. Can we have this for ourselves, for our internal team? So we've now started opening that up to kind of other people, to allow them to kind of use that tool as well. So we've actually taken a little bit of a lead in terms of our own kind of process and planning. And then we're in the process now of starting, obviously, our AI journey, as I think everybody else is within that process as well.
Yeah. And I wonder, when it comes to incorporating AI, are there fears about regulation in that? Because whenever I think about AI in something like financial advice, I always wonder, the FCA always takes a while to catch up to something. So eventually I know that it's going to be like a regulation concern. There's going to be certain things put in place. Is that something that you think about while you're building that process?
To an extent, but I think you have to be innovative in terms of kind of what you're looking at and how you do it without worrying too much about what's going to change. Ultimately, we can't control what happens with the FCA and kind of regulatory stuff or what other people are doing and things like that. All we can control is what we do and what we see as a need at this point. And who knows kind of where the regulator will end up with the AI stuff, whether they'll be on board with it, whether they'll actually understand what it is and how it works. I think the danger more so at the moment than the regulator is AI for AI's sake. So people just hearing about AI and go, oh, we need to be part of it, and how do we get involved with it? Not necessarily using kind of AI in the right way or the wrong tools. I always speak to people and liken it to, I'm old enough to remember kind of VHS and Betamax. Like, is it going to be ChatGPT with Microsoft? Is it going to be Google? Is it going to be something else? If you hit your kind of wagon to the wrong one, is that going to be detrimental? So there's all that type of stuff to think about as well. AI, without a doubt, is going to be transformative. And anybody that kind of is burying the head in the sand needs to kind of take it out a little bit, because it is going to change the way we do things. How quickly that happens depends on obviously the technology. I think there's a bit of too much hype on what it can do at this point and whether it's going to replace everybody. So that's something we just need to bear in mind and not just jump on the bandwagon because everybody's talking about AI and you don't want to get left behind.
Yeah, I think for me, I always think that it's streamlined a lot of processes because I'm a tech, well, I'm not necessarily a tech geek, but anything new and shiny that comes out, I always want to play around with it myself. And I've seen how I can use it for myself. But I wouldn't say that it's like taken away a bunch of my work, or I can use it to replace what I actually do on a daily basis. Like it can't coordinate a podcast like this.
No.
So I think we're all okay. It's just, yeah, using it, figuring out how to utilize it to streamline your workload.
Yeah, and I think it's efficiencies for me. That's what it is. Efficiency is the key when it comes to AI and how that helps. I think there's always going to be a human element to it. But yeah, I'm really excited to see where it goes, and we're on our AI journey ourselves.
Yeah. And as a leader in paraplanning, where do you see the industry heading in terms of technology adoption, regulatory changes, and the evolving role of paraplanners? You've already kind of touched about. You think, there should be that diploma minimum.
Yeah, I think so. And obviously we've talked a bit about obviously AI as well. I think where I would see it was paraplanners becoming more involved in the process in terms of the actual planning. So the way I see it going forward is going to be advisors. There's so much pressure on them at the moment in terms of obviously consumer duty, regulatory pressures, the kind of all of the stuff that they have to deal with, even running businesses and kind of making sure it's profitable and all that stuff as well. There's a lot of kind of pressures on advisors. So the way I kind of envision it going is that advisors will be much more relationship based. So they'll deal much more with the client and kind of building stronger, more meaningful relationships and less reliant on the nitty gritty of actually the financial plan behind it. There's two things I think will work well with that. So one is the closer relationships with the clients are going to bring out more of their kind of goals that they want. So they're going to be more honest with what they're actually looking to achieve. So when we actually put plans together for them, they're going to be much more tailored to the individual client than they potentially would be if the advisor's gone in, had a kind of brief conversation, come away and a report's put together. I think the relationship will change in that I'll be much more focused on the client and their kind of aspirations. And then the power planner in the backgrounds will effectively work more on the detail. And one, we can obviously focus more of our time as power planners on regulatory stuff, changes in legislation, changes in tax stuff that kind of we need to know and understand. And two, we can take our kind of a more broad approach to it because we're not emotionally invested in the relationship with the client. We look at it pure from a numbers and figures perspective and go, does that make sense? Doesn't it make sense? Whereas a client really, really wants to go on a round the world trip, but they can't really afford it. So it's that kind of combination between the two that I think will grow over the next few years. And again, it goes back slightly to what I was saying before about the power planners kind of being a profession. I would like to see power planners regulated, because I think working in conjunction with advisors makes a lot of sense. And I think it'll enhance the relationships with clients, help bridge the advice gap. And there's a lot of kind of stuff that could potentially help with that. So that's probably the big thing. The other thing is probably moving away from kind of more in-house power planners as an outsourcer. Obviously, I'm probably going to say that, but I think with the advent of things like AI and the relationship that's happening, I think more and more people will look at, okay, well, my in-house team, I do pensions all the time, for example. So my in-house team can deal with that absolutely fine. But I've got a defined benefit or IHT that I'm not getting through every week or every month. Whereas as an outsourcer, we see kind of QRUPs and IHT stuff and defined benefit stuff kind of on a weekly basis. So our knowledge and experience and expertise is probably slightly higher than in-house teams. That's not across the board, but in general, that's the way that we kind of see it. So we probably see more people tap into that as an outsourcer as well. So probably the main things I can see, particularly from a power planner perspective, being trends over the next few years.
Yeah. And I also wonder how your firm adapts to industry shifts to stay ahead of the curve and continue providing top tier power planning services. I know you just mentioned that you see things to do with the IHTs on probably a weekly basis. And, there's already rumors about the possible increase in that come the budget later on this year. So is that something that you start working on and anticipating already, or how do you?
It's not necessarily kind of we are aware of it is probably the easiest way to explain it, because I don't know, who knows what they're going to do. Like it changes, and then they'll release something and then they'll realize they got it wrong and change it again. And so we're at the whims, as we all are, to kind of political kind of political winds. So from my perspective, it's kind of being aware of potentially what's coming through. There's always rumors about pensions and lifetime allowances and kind of changes to the tax-free cash, and also kind of the pension giveaways that they're given from tax relief and stuff. So there's always that in the background. We can't get too caught up on that. I think we just need to go with what's actually going ahead and adapt as that happens. But being aware of it is probably the key thing. And we do that with we have a monthly, what we call a quality meeting. So every month we look at our existing business cases we've done, any legislation changes, anything up and coming, obviously AI stuff, and anything that can relate to the quality of our support. And we have that every month, and that's kind of how we try and keep on top of it.
Yeah. And how do you foster strong relationships with financial advisors? What role does communication and collaboration play in ensuring a seamless client experience?
So communication, I think that's the biggest thing, is vitally important. As a business, we are remote, so we're 100% remote. So we're not in the client meetings with them. We kind of only deal with what they provide to us. So communication is absolutely key to fostering those relationships with advisors and having those different lines of communication. So one of the things we've found in the past is advisors don't necessarily all communicate in the same way. Some like email, some love to give you a call and chat things through. Some are really happy to jump on a kind of conversation like we're having now. So being able to adapt to that and have different communication options for advisors. Some literally just want to send you an email, which is fine. So we have to have ways that we can work together that gives, to an extent, the same experience for the advisor, regardless of how they do it. So communication is absolutely key. Honesty within that as well, within the communication side of it is always key. Obviously bringing that personal element and to it, just being honest in terms of capacity of our team, kind of stuff that we've dealt with in the past, and ensuring obviously the client relationships work around that. One of the things we always say is we'll never get it 100% right. It'd be like disingenuous for me to say we'll get it right 100% of the time. So having that honesty and saying, look, if we do not kind of get it right the first time or wherever, we'll learn from that with our quality committee, and we're always open and honest with that. So honesty is definitely key for that as well. And the last thing for me on that probably is to know there's such a thing as a bad client. So that's one of the things I've learned. I've seen 10 years of a business. We try to please everybody, but sometimes kind of relationships just don't work. Cultures don't match up, and kind of being okay with that. As well can kind of help with the relationship. There's no point having a really tense relationship from a business perspective, because it doesn't help us and it doesn't help them. So understanding that sometimes it's okay to walk away from a client is right. That's probably for the advisors as well. I'm sure they've got clients where actually it makes sense to not engage with them.
Yeah. I think, yeah, sometimes it is just difficult in life in general to know when to walk away. Sometimes you're like, maybe I need to just try and pivot the way I'm doing this, and sometimes the best thing is just to know that I can't do anything with this. This isn't going to improve my life. This isn't going to improve their life. It's better to part ways. Yeah.
Exactly. That's difficult sometimes to know when that is. And that takes time to get to.
Yeah. And kind of, I guess, bouncing off of that, what advice would you offer to financial advisors seeking to leverage paraplanning services effectively to grow their business and enhance client satisfaction? You did talk a little bit about, if they have an in-house team and the in-house team is experts at this one area, there might be areas that they have blind spots in. So they can reach out to like your services. So what advice would you give for those financial advisors that might be considering that?
I think process is definitely key. So we're a very process driven kind of business. We're not in the client meetings. We kind of, a lot of the times we don't have prior experience of working with the client we're asked to kind of write reports for and stuff like that. So understanding that and also making sure that the process of getting the information we need in terms of the background to the client, their kind of goals, aspirations, all of that stuff is really clear and repeatable. So it's very easy then for them to kind of engage with the relationship, get the kind of essence of what they're looking to do and kind of what the advice is going to be, and having a process of how they kind of do that fits in kind of within their existing team. Because it's really difficult then if you've got obviously an in-house team and a kind of an outsourced team and you're operating two different models with that. You need to try and obviously streamline that process across it all, which isn't always possible, but kind of getting it as close to as kind of even makes a big difference from that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think the other thing is, particularly if they're working with outsourcers like ourselves, is we're working with multiple advisors at one point, and just to kind of have patience sometimes. Often we get a piece of work sent over, and probably within hours, it's like, oh, have you had a look at this stuff yet? And so we will, but obviously we need to kind of deal with the other people that are obviously relying on our service as well. So patience is a virtue, I think, in those instances.
Yeah, I can relate to that, and I'm not even a paraplanner. I've also dealt with that, and sometimes I'm like, I'm just one person. I don't know what to. I mean, obviously they're thinking that you might have millions and like loads of people who are focusing on their particular thing. But yeah, patience is important.
Yeah, and I think that's partly why we had obviously Flow with our system. We give people access to it so they can see. So that's obviously helped people to be kind of more comfortable rather than sending something in and I don't know where it's up to, and a week later I don't know what's going on. They can literally log in and see, okay, it's at this stage, next it's going to be dealt with on this day, and they don't then need to ring the power planner and disturb them whilst they're in the middle of a tax calculation, for example. So that definitely helps with that kind of relationship as well.
Yeah, I think transparency always helps in anything. Transparency, communication, it always just solves so many issues because, yeah, everyone understands what's going on. But finally, in your opinion, what role do industry awards like the Money Marketing Awards play in elevating the profile of paraplanning and recognizing its importance in the financial advice process?
I touched on it a little bit earlier as well. I think it definitely helps with elevating it more into the profession that obviously I want it to be and to be recognised of. So having those recognitions of those paraplanners that kind of do go above and beyond and have a passion for paraplanning is obviously going to elevate that, not just kind of in the paraplanning world, if you like, but also obviously for advisors to understand actually these guys do X, Y, and Z, or I didn't know this is kind of what paraplanners did, because Again, there's some differences between what individual power planners do or what's classed as power planning work, for example. So being recognized within that and having awards that kind of recognize excellence within that, I think is really, really useful. But it's also kind of helping to bring recognition on a wider basis to kind of the wider people outside of financial services. I mean, people ask me what I do, and the kind of responses I get about like parachuting and stuff like this, people don't really know what paraplanning is. So anything that can help elevate that and kind of help bring recognition to that is obviously beneficial for everybody involved.
Yeah. No, yeah. To be fair, I think before I started working for this, for money marketing, I probably would have thought that it was something to do with parachuting as well.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
But again, people don't, when I tell people what I do, they have no idea. I always have to like give them a day-to-day task list of what I normally do for them to kind of get an understanding. And even then they don't quite understand. So I think, again, transparency, communication will allow people to understand.
I mean, anything we can do to elevate it, I'm all for. So the industry awards and obviously the award that we won has been fantastic to do that. So thank you again to Money Marketing for that.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. But thank you so much for speaking with me today, Scott. This was a really enlightening conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Money Marketing Podcast. We hope you've been inspired by the incredible journeys of our past award winners and are looking forward to the excitement of the 2024 Money Marketing Awards. Don't forget to subscribe for more valuable industry insights and be sure to secure your spot at this year's event. See you next time.